The Encyclopedic Glossary of the Second Apocalypse. Section B. Baggerata. The Sweeping Way of Skilvendi Sword Fighting. The Straits of Bajeta. The straits separating the southwestern tip of Naran from the southeastern extremities of Saranj. Bardic Priest. In the traditional folk religions of the ancient North, a type of wandering priest who earned his living reciting scriptural lays and performing priestly functions for various gods. Barasulus Nereza. The King of Saranj, at once admired and maligned throughout the Three Seas for his mercantile ingenuity. He is notorious for surviving and managing to reverse trial censor not once, but 3 times. The Barricades. One of the sublime contrivances of the artisan Emilitis, the sorcerer's portal barring the only entrance to the Inku Haloinus that Nilgikis and his Kuya could not seal from within. Though easily the most significant of the artisan's Aporos-defying works, the barricades remain largely a mystery. The few extant descriptions that remain are apocryphal and inconsistent. Batathent. A ruined fortress dating back to the pre-classical Kyranius, and destroyed by the Skilvendi shortly after the fall of Cannae in 3351. The Batrial Campus. Imperial parade and drill ground to the north of the Andiamine Heights, bounding the guest compound. Battle Celebrant. An honor bestowed by the Gilgallic priesthood on those most responsible for victory in battle. The Battle of Anwarat. A pivotal battle of the First Holy War, fought in the summer of 4111 about the fortress of Anwarat, south of the Sempis Delta. Despite early setbacks, the Unrethi under Nair Sciotha managed to rout the Chianine host of Scaurus ab Nalajan, allowing the subsequent conquest of southern Shigek and opening the road to Karaskand. The Battle of Karaskand. Sometimes called the Battle of Terte Fields, the desperate and pivotal battle in 4112 between the host of Kaskamadri ab Teferokar, the Pati Raja of Kian, and the First Holy War under Anasarim Berkelhus, where the Fainim, despite outnumbering the diseased and starved Inrithi, found themselves incapable of slowing or stopping the First Holy War's general advance. Many attribute the Inrithi victory to the intercession of the god, though a more likely explanation is to be found in the revelatory events immediately preceding the battle. Nerse Proias is particularly effective in his descriptions of the maniacal morale enjoyed by the Inrithi as a result of the warrior prophet's circumfixion and subsequent vindication. That the Chianine were overconfident is amply demonstrated by the Pati Raja's decision to allow the First Holy War to assemble its ranks unmolested. The Battle of Elianot Fields. The great battle between the horde of the No-God and the Second Ordeal on Kuniori's northeastern frontier in 2146. Despite having assembled the greatest host of the age, Anasarim Berkelmomus and his allies were unprepared for the vast numbers of Shrank, Bashrag, and Raku gathered by the No-God and his consort slaves. The battle was an unmitigated catastrophe and signaled the eventual destruction of Norserai civilization. The Battle of Imogirion. The disaster that ended Iliseru's attempt to surprise the Vile with a sea invasion. Scarcely 100 Ishroi survived to sail back to their mansion. Of these, all but one, the famed Mor Yor, would die in the tempest that racked their return. The Battle of Imweor. Also known as the First Battle of the Horde. The inaugural battle between the Great Ordeal and the Horde in the summer of 4132, so named for the ancient province that witnessed it. After spending several weeks retreating before the advancing Great Ordeal, sheer numbers and starvation triggered the Horde to attack. Unbeknownst to the Ordealmen, the Consult had shadowed their progress with several yokes, divisions of chained Shrank that they unleashed in the Ordeal's rear as the Horde descended upon them. The battle would have proved the expedition's first great disaster, were it not for the Scions, who encountered the Consort Legion whilst foraging for food to the south of the host. The Battle of Isalmial. also known as the Abandon, the final open battle of the Kuno-Inkoroi Wars, where Nilgikis, leading the Ishroi of Sheol and Injor, threw the last of the Inkoroi back into the Inku Haloinis. The Battle of Kaiuth, an important engagement between the Imperial Army of Nan-Sur and the Skilvendi, fought in 4110 on the banks of River Kaiuth, a tributary to the Sempest River system. The overconfident Skilvendi king of tribes led his people into a trap laid by I-Cure Confus, the Nan-Sur exalt general. The resulting defeat was unprecedented, given that it occurred on the Geowanti steppe. The Battle of Maon, a minor battle fought between Konraya and Seitaidon in 4092. The Battle of Messerenoth, the first great battle fought between the gathered might of Kyrenius and the host of the No-God on the Atong Plateau in 2154. Though Orang, the No-God's horde general, won the battle, the Kyrenian High King, Anaxophis V, was able to escape with much of his host intact, setting the stage for the far more decisive Battle of Mengeta the following year. The Second Battle of Mengeta, the desperate battle where Anaxophis V and his southern tributaries and allies made their victorious stand against the horde of the No-God in 2155, widely regarded as the most important battle in history. The Fourth Battle of Mengeta, the battle where the so-called Vulgar Holy War, under Nursei Kalmamunis, suffered utter destruction at the hands of the Kianin under Scaurus ab Nalajan in 4110. The Fifth Battle of Mengeta, the first decisive battle fought between the First Holy War and the Kianin in 4111. Plagued with organizational problems and dissension among its commanders, the First Holy War, under the nominal command of Prince Coithus Sabon, was caught by Scaurus ab Nalajan and his Kianin host on the plains of Mengeta with only half of its available strength. From morning to late afternoon, the Unrithi managed to beat back the innumerable Kianin charges. When the remainder of the First Holy War arrived on the Phanim flank, the will of the Kianin broke and they were routed. The Battle of Perempti, a minor battle fought between Konraya and Seitaidon in 4109, and the first military victory of Prince Nursei Proyas. Historically significant because Proyas had his cousin, Kelmamunis, whipped for impiety, an act that many historians claim precipitated Kelmamunis' decision to prematurely march with the so-called Vulgar Holy War. The Battle of Pir Minginial, Second Battle of the Ark, which ended in the dramatic defeat of the assembled mansions after Ninjanjan struck down Kujarakimwa. Often referred to as simply the battle, Pir Minginial is widely eulogized in non-man treatises and lays for the sheer number of legendary heroes butchered there, as well as for the 5 centuries of woe that followed. The Battle of Pir Pahal, first great contest on the fields of Elianat between the Inkoroi under Sil, king after the fall, and the non-men under Kujarakimwa, who would strike down Sil and seize the Heron Spear. The Inkoroi fled back to the Inku Haloinis, so complete was the non-man victory. Facing crises elsewhere in his empire, Kujarakimwa instituted what has come to be called the Second Watch. The Battle of Trantis Bay, the decisive sea battle where the Kianin fleet, using Kisharim, was able to annihilate the Imperial Nansur fleet under General Sastosian in 4111, thereby denying the First Holy War its primary source of water for its march across Kemema. The Battle of Taiwanrei Fords, one of the 3 disastrous defeats suffered by Axercia and its allies at the hands of the Horde of the No-God. Taiwanrei is often evoked by Mandate scholars as an example of the limitations of using Korei alone to cope with enemy sorcerers in battle. The Battle of Zerkurta, a major battle fought between the Kianin host of Hizjanet Eb Scaurus and the Skilvendi under Yursut Urs Muknai on the Geowanti steppe in 4103. Though their cavalry proved no match for the Skilvendi, and Histinet himself was slain, the Cianine were quick in recovering, and most of the ill-fated expedition survived. Beal, a semi-mountainous fiefdom in northern Galioth, widely thought accursed. Benjuka, a subtle and ancient game of strategy played by caste nobility throughout the Three Seas. A derivative of the more esoteric Mirku, played by the non-men, the first extant references to Benjuka date back to the so-called non-man tutelage. Betmulla Mountains, a minor mountain range forming the southwestern frontier of both Zerash and Imotu. The traditional location of the lost non-man mansion of Iliseru. House Byaxi, one of the houses of the Congregate, and traditional rival to House Ikure. Billows, name of the specialized robes worn by sorcerers and witches of all schools throughout the Great Ordeal. Typical robes possess dozens of silk bolts, as long as 10 cubits or more, which, with the assistance of a specialized cant, would writhe about the wearer when unfurled, providing some measure of protection from any thrown or fired kore. Bios, the principle of living things independent of the soul. Black Heaven, the Shrank name for the No God, translated from Irutruka in a Gurzoi. The Black Iron Seat, the throne of the non-man king of Ishtarabinth, hewn from the spot where, during the siege of Ishtarabinth, Orang struck the ensorcelled Miranautic gates with the Sun Lance, sister spear of the Heron Spear, before it exploded. The impact crater forms the seat of the throne, with the slag thrown by the strike constituting the back and sides, and the remaining thickness of the gate making the base. The Boatman, the non-man charged with feeding the erratics dwelling in the holy deep of Ishtarabinth, once known as Morihimra, the father of orphans, most ancient warrior, and uncle of Kujarakimwa. As the only aged non-man to be rendered immortal by the inoculation, he is a perpetual reminder of the mortality and decrepitude his nephew exchanged for the womb plague. Bogyar Thurhig, Holka Ordealman, descendant of the famed Thurher Eriok, and spear-bearer to Coithus Sabon during the Great Ordeal. Boxarius Pyrrhus, the Canaan emperor who standardized trading protocols within the empire and established a thriving system of markets in its major cities. The Book of Circles and Spirals, the magnum opus of Sorinus. For real? Providing an entertaining blend of philosophical commentary and religious aphorism. The Book of Devices, an oft-revised Nansur military manual depicting the banner devices of their ancestral foes. The Book of Divine Acts, the magnum opus of Memgawa, the famed Zeumi sage and philosopher. Though not as commonly read or copied as his celestial aphorisms, most scholars consider it a vastly superior work. The Breaking of the Gates, legendary assault on the gates of Erwa, a series of fortified passes through the Great Kaarsis by the men of Eana. Since the Chronicle of the Tusk ends with the determination to invade Erwa, or the land of the uplifted sun, and since the non-man mansions most involved in resisting the tribes of men were all destroyed, very little is known either of the breaking of the gates or of the subsequent migratory invasions. Bucris, the god of famine, as one of the so-called punitive gods, who command sacrifices through threat of the imposition of suffering. Bucris has no real cult or priesthood. According to Kuniat tradition, Bucris is the older brother of Anake, which is why the Anakian cultic priests typically administer the rites of propitiation during times of hunger. The Burning of the White Ships, one of the more famous acts of treachery during the apocalypse. Falling back before the consort legions, Anasir and Bernai Merrick dispatched the Eorsic fleets in 2134 to shelter in the Cuniorc port of Aesuria, where it was burned by agents unknown mere days after its arrival, deepening the feud between the two peoples with tragic consequences. Byantis. A near-antique writer of the Canaan Empire, his translations, an account of all the varied customs of the peoples making up the empire, would render him famous to later generations. The precision of his observations remain unparalleled. The death of those customs in the intervening centuries has had a profound impact on 3C's thought, imbuing it with a historical self-awareness it had not possessed before. Before Byantis, men were blind to the fundamental transformations wrought by the passage of time. A far smaller fraction of the soul belonged to the realm of the immutable after him. Byantis was excised by imperial authorities in 4121 for perhaps this very reason.